This video is about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, his legacy, his performance as the first president of Ghana, and what happened during, before, and after his coup. We are trying to paint a picture of the state and the mood of Ghana in the early 1960s, and trying to draw a line from that era to the current state of affairs right now in Ghana. So let's get into it. In making this video, we realize that it is acceptable to critically analyze leaders like Mao Zedong, Lee Kuan Yew, or even Winston Churchill. But when it comes to Kwame Nkrumah, the conversation becomes emotional, hostile, and tribal. Why does analyzing Nkrumah feel like an attack on Ghana itself? And what are we really afraid of discovering? In many post-colonial societies, revolutionary leaders are treated less like historical figures and more like sacred symbols. Nkrumah is not just Ghana's first president. He represents independence, dignity, and African self-belief. So any criticisms feels like a betrayal. Yet countries that progressed fastest were not afraid to analyze their founding figures honestly. China openly studies Mao, his successes and failures. Singapore teaches Lee Kuan Yew's authoritarian policies alongside his achievements. And even the British still studies the actions and inactions of Winston Churchill and the effects on the British Empire in its end days. They try to separate the symbolism from governance. So that's what we are going to try and do here today. We're going to just base our argument, our analysis on facts instead of emotions or our prejudice. So when it comes to Nkrumah, there are two schools of thoughts or two main arguments about him. The first school of thought, Nkrumah was a dictator. And this school of thought argues that Nkrumah became increasingly authoritarian and dangerous to democracy. And these are the key parts of the argument. They said he was trying to establish a one-party state where opposition parties were banned. He established the Preventive Detention Act, where people could be jailed without trial just for criticizing his political party or he himself. And there was a high level of media control where the state propaganda replaced free press. And he was also a cult of personality, so loyalty to Nkrumah became like loyalty to the state, which was not very healthy. So from this perspective, freedom was shrinking and fear was growing. So to this group, the 1966 coup was not treason, it was rescue. They believed Ghana was being saved from sliding into permanent dictatorship. This argument is rooted in Western multi-party democracy, where political pluralism is sacred and power must always be contested. For instance, in the United Kingdom or the USA, leaders change through elections, rule of law limits power, individual freedoms are prioritized even at the cost of slower development. According to this logic, no development justifies dictatorship, which is a very sound argument. And the second school of thought sees Nkrumah as the visionary. They argue that Nkrumah was not a dictator, he was a revolutionary in a hostile world post-World War II. He established state-led industrialization, long-term planning like 7-year development plan he was following. The supporters argue that multi-party politics at that stage would have weakened national unity, and they believe strong central power was necessary to resist foreign sabotage during the era of the Cold War, where Ghana was surrounded by hostile Western interests, whether political or corporate interests from the West. And they based the argument around characters like China under Mao and Deng, where they were politically repressed but there was massive transformation. Singapore under Lee Kuan Yew, there was limited freedom and ruthless discipline in the approach to achieving their world-class results. And also, even in Korea, there was early military rule from the 1960s to 1980s before their democracy. which led to their economical miracle. In all these cases, political freedom came after economic transformation, and here the belief is clear: the ends justify the means. If the end is national survival and national progress, whatever the political system needed to do it is accepted. So we took a look at these two schools of thought and we tried to reality check them and try to use facts to dissect the argument. So we are going to go about it this way. This is the reality of Kwame Nkrumah's final years. The truth is, both sides are right and both sides are wrong when it comes to those years. The mood in Ghana, there was growing fear among citizens. Widespread informants like the pioneers, increasing detentions through the Preventive Act, and declining trust in government. Nkrumah became isolated and suspicious and increasingly authoritarian, especially after multiple assassination attempts on him. The economy after 1960 relied heavily on borrowing. There was falling prices in cocoa, overambitious projects, and balance of payment problems when it comes to the economy. But transformation was real, and so were the cracks. So we can say that the coup, even though it had documented foreign influence, did not happen in a vacuum. And let us face the facts. Nkrumah's coup had all the symptoms of a typical CIA MI6 regime change. First, the populace are made or turned against their government through sanctions that pressures them, and also their turning on the government is eased with propaganda. There's one propaganda that is so funny that whenever I hear it from my grandmother, I laugh. Is that Nkrumah sustained injuries from one of the assassination attempts against him, that he had to walk dominantly with a walking stick, and there was propaganda about that stick being a teraphim, a source of some evil mythical powers he had, which may sound funny to you if you're a foreign audience, but in Ghana this is a believable thing, and especially at that time. So the populace were worked against him, especially when the Western powers turned the heat up using sanctions. And also in that era there was Cold War geopolitics, where the Soviet Union and the United States of America were moving countries and state leaders like chessboard pieces. If you fought or even were seen in the light of the other one of these two big countries, you had a target on your back. Even though Nkrumah was famously non-aligned, some Western political commentators believed he was more friendly towards socialist and communist ideas than Western capitalist ideas. So it was clear Ghana was drifting away from Western influence. But the truth is, removing Nkrumah did not bring stability or prosperity to Ghanaians. The aftermath of the coup was that Ghana was drawn into a spiral of series of military coups. Policy reversals, institutional decay, dependency on IMF and the World Bank. The coup just replaced authoritarian development with authoritarian instability. And at this point, it seems the argument of the second school of thought is winning. But here's my perspective on all this. So what is this debate really about? Is it about democracy versus dictatorship? Is it about Western ideals and systems are good and any other system different or opposed to that are evil? Here is the hard question. If a country is democratic but poor, dependent and stagnant, is that success? If another country is authoritarian but rapidly transformed, is that failure? China, Singapore, South Korea answered this question differently. Ghana chose comfort, familiarity, and Western approval over their development. So the first argument is right. Nkrumah was not perfect, and maybe the coup plotters were not heroes either, but pawns of the CIA or the British military intelligence. But Ghana's real tragedy is not choosing wrong, but never choosing decisively whether to go full Western or their own way. And which choice actually serves the people? Because the real question isn't whether Nkrumah was right or wrong in his approach to transforming the nation. The real question is, if Nkrumah had not been overthrown, what kind of Ghana would we be living in today? And more dangerously, are we still afraid to choose progress over comfort?